Welcome to the ninth week after Pentecost. It's Monday, July the 29th, 2024. This is the Manna at the Tap podcast, where we as a community actively seek the spiritual nourishment our souls crave. I'm Gloria, your fellow traveler on this spiritual journey, and together we guide each other, offering and receiving insights and interpretations from our daily lectionary readings, which provide the manna designed to nurture our spiritual growth. Today's lectionary text is the familiar story of David plotting the death of Uriah in 2 Samuel chapter 11, verses 14 to 21. Chapter 11 opens with these somber words. In the spring, when kings go off to war, David remained in Jerusalem. End of quote. David sent his commander-in-chief Joab out to war to deal with the army and the enemies of Israel, while David stayed at home to plan leisure time and execute a game of conquering his greatest enemy, lust. After sleeping in, David got up and walked around the roof of his home looking for a woman he could devour. When he saw her, he sent for her, took her, and lay with her, and then sent her back home. He never left the palace. Instead, he acquired her through proxies, messengers, secret communications, and commanders to bring her to him. After he raped the woman who had a husband, he sent for her unsuspecting husband, Uriah, to come home from the battle so he could go to his house to sleep with his wife. This was a calculating plot David planned and executed, designed to cover his tracks without a hint of remorse. This was an act of abuse of power on innocent persons. When David asked Uriah to go home to his wife, he refused to shirk his responsibilities. He refused to go home to see his wife because he wanted to remain loyal, even though this placed him in a position to disobey a direct order from David. Uriah inadvertently foiled David's plan for him to sleep with his wife so he would be responsible for her pregnancy. David is still calculating. He's angry at Uriah and he begins to plot Uriah's death. Uriah and Bathsheba, his wife, are used to magnify the evil in David's heart. Since Uriah did not cooperate by going home, David told him to spend the night and then he will return to the battlefield the next day. David sent a letter to Joab, his commander-in-chief, by the hand of Uriah to have him be put on the front lines, and this was the downward spiral of David, a man who had a heart to follow after God, and then to be a man who raped another man's wife and then had him murdered. The lectionary texts of verses 14 to 21 show David plotting orders for Uriah's execution. His letter to Joab clearly stated that Uriah was to be out in front where the fighting was fierce. Joab was then to leave Uriah without any protection so he would be struck down and die. Everything in David's plan depended on Uriah's death. But David could not control the loyal Uriah or manage the pregnancy of Uriah's wife. We'll notice there's a transition from David entertaining Uriah in the evening till he's drunk, and then in the morning when David completes the letter to Joab and sends it by Uriah's hand. Just take a moment to imagine what that night was like for David as he was pacing, thinking, plotting frantically what to say in the letter so no one would be able to pin the murder on him. Joab wants David's orders in writing, and David is unashamedly desperate. And Joab needs no explanation of the king's orders because he can read between the lines. He carried out the king's orders obediently and effectively. He will send David back a full battle report, but it must be carefully prepared. It makes us wonder if Joab realized that he too was being abused by David and used for such an evil strategy. He will crouch the report in subtle, misleading language so only the king can understand. He expects David to be angry about the strategy of placing the men in danger so close to the city to fight. And Joab will warn the messenger that David might raise several scenarios portraying himself as a caring commander. But Joab told the messenger only to say, Uriah the Hittite is dead. Joab knows these words will end David's ranting because David does not care if the entire regiment is lost, so long as it includes Uriah. The lectionary reading calls us to take a Selah moment, and continue this narrative with tomorrow's readings of verses 22 to 27. From the outside, David is relieved, not caring about the other deaths or the rest of the report. What he wanted to happen happened. In David's mind, the pregnancy will be reassigned to Uriah, the truth has been concealed, the guilt will be passed, David will be free of the burden, and the monarchy will be saved. Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand?